Well, let's make a weird
The kids are coming now.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Or else.
We'll have everyone gather behind the chairs.
Behind the chair.
I want to tell you something nice, and then I'm going to say to everybody. I have a very dear friend from Genesis School. She's also a rabbi. And I texted her yesterday because she grew up in Denver. And I said, did you know Blanche Greenberg? And she said, my friend Robyn said she was my first grade teacher. And I'm going to quote her in the beginning of this service because she talked about running into Blanche after Blanche had gone back to piano and how powerful that was.
Beautiful.
Made me cry in the middle of the night.
Beautiful.
I invite everyone, well, it's very loud, stand where you're most comfortable. I also ask you to turn off your phones if you would. We are live streaming the service, so those who are not here physically can be here. Thank you all for joining us. But we have to have phones ringing.
Beautiful.
For the whole family, how many spots are there? A dozen. A dozen.
No one should rush there though, okay? No one should rush there.
No. We're all together.
So we're going to do Kriya. I'm going to walk before we throw a blessing. I'm going to suggest you stay seated because I think that's going to be the easiest physically here. In the Torah, we read, or in the Hebrew Bible, we read that people tore their garments as a sign of their mourning. We will turn to you have a, you can actually, I know you've probably seen many people tear their garments. We're going to actually tear the ribbon that you're wearing, and one of your boys will help you in a moment. I invite you to repeat after me. Baruch atah Adonai,
Baruch atah Adonai,
Dayan ha'emet.
Dayan ha'emet.
We praise you, Adonai, our God, judge of the cycles and seasons of our lives. You take the ribbon with two hands and you pull opposite directions. So, Jerry, do you think Judy's going to help you? Maybe put your hands on Judy's hands to do it, okay? And you do it together. Just hold it. Perfect. Judy's going to help you. It's the tearing of the ribbon. It symbolizes the tear in your heart. Good. You can let go of that. That ribbon, which you can wear for the day, for the week, for the month of Shloshim, you wear it inside or outside your garments. That ribbon speaks to the world what you feel in your heart. The most awful tear in your heart and in your soul. I'm Rabbi Lisa Green, North Shore Congregation, Israel. So take a moment. Think about the teacher who made an impact on your life. The teacher whose memory, whose lessons, whose face, whose tone you carry with you. We all have them. Jewish tradition says when you educate a child, it is as if you gave that child life, as if you raised them. I'm not sure how many children Blanche educated. Hundreds, thousands, a lot. So you three, her sons, are here. In fact, your mother gave life to many, many more. I took out my phone not to look at my phone, but because of a text I just mentioned to Jerry, a dear rabbinic friend of mine. I texted late last night. Turns out Blanche was her first grade teacher. And she says, everyone remembers their first grade teacher. She said, Blanche, for me, filled that role with love and tenderness, and in my case, a good amount of needed firmness. She also mentioned running into Mrs. Greenberg while she, my friend Robyn, was in college. She said, Mrs. Greenberg told me about her return to playing piano. What struck me then and now was her passion and love. The work was a gift she gave herself. Indeed, we approached Blanche's gravesite with music. Jerry, that was a gift you gave Blanche when she returned to piano. We gather with love and remembrance. We gather to remember a daughter, a wife, a mother, mother-in-law, grandmother, grandmother-in-law, and great-grandmother, a dear friend, aunt, cousin. We remember with great love and gratitude and with deep sadness. Even as these last recent years have been most challenging, have not given you, her loved ones, the Blanche that you knew in the same way, she was still here. Let us think about how she taught us, whether we were in her classroom or her home or her holiday table or a casual conversation. Because those people who are teachers, there are many who are teachers by profession, and there are many who are teachers by profession and teachers in their soul. It was clear to me from what I've heard that Blanche was both. So let us carry the lessons of her life with us. The poet writes, birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage. From childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage from birth to death to life everlasting. As we praise you this day, O God, we think of those whose death devastated our lives. We feel the bonds that tied us together, the love that we shared, and the memories that remain with us still. What are we, O God, that you should care for us? Our days are like a fleeting shadow, a wistful sigh, the whisper of the wind. So teach us to treasure each day of our life as a precious gift from our Creator, and to treasure all whom we love today and every day. As we gather today with grief and sadness, we gather with deep gratitude for Blanche, for her life. We bring the lessons and the moments and the memories of her life into our own. A voice says, cry out, and I say, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all its beauty is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades, when a wind of the Lord blows upon it. Surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God shall endure forever. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar etchem b'tzalmo, v'zazon v'chokeh lechem b'tuvo, v'himit etchem b'din, v'natah b'tochenu chayei olam. Baruch atah Adonai dayan ha'emet. We praise you, O God, judge of truths. Eternal is your might, O God, all life is your gift. Great is your power to save. With love you sustain the living, and with great compassion you give life to all. You send help to the falling and healing to the sick. You bring freedom to the captive and keep faith with those who sleep in the dust. Baruch atah Adonai notea b'tochenu chayei olam. We praise you, O God, who implants eternal life within us. So we turn to the words of the psalmist. I invite you to join with me. The pamphlet you received as you arrived has it in the text of the 23rd Psalm. Don't blow away. We join together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And as we continue with the voice of our sacred scriptures, we hear the words of Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, who writes, for everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. And ancient people were well acquainted with grief and the valley of shadows. Death and sorrows are not strangers to us, yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave and that there is strength in faith. With Job we say, Adonai Natan, God you've given. You gave us Blanche, a loved one who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in her life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai Lakach, God, you've taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we say, Hashem Adonai Mevorach. Blessed be God's name forever and ever. Pause for a few moments of silent prayer and reflection. The words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock and our redeemer. Each of us is given a number of days and years to fill as they see fit. How we fill that time, what we build and create, our hopes, our dreams, our passions, our challenges, our successes, they all become others' treasured memories after our life is drawn to a close. Turn to Blanche's sons, you closest to the special story of your mom's life, to share your memories of your mother.
Glad we're all here. I just want to share a few thoughts that I wrote about our mom. I hope you like it, but this is what I wanted to share. So, dear Mom, I knew this day was coming for a long time. Your dementia has lasted too long, and it robbed her of her ability to be herself for the last several years. We all know that. But we take a lot from before that, and even then with all of her smiles when she couldn't really communicate. But I want to remember the great things about her that she brought to the world. First, Mom, you were such a wonderful wife to Cherry, 66 years. Not too many people can say that. You made Dad a better man by not only giving birth to his 3 sons, but you brought so many good values into our house growing up. Your devotion and knowledge of Judaism was foundational to our upbringing. You always made the Jewish holidays special and important to the family. Your push for education, and particularly reading, was so important in our family. I can never thank you enough, Mom, for the many things, but instilling a life of learning and reading was so important for Scott, Greg, and I. I next want to reference what the rabbi brought up, your important work as a teacher at the Hebrew Day School in Denver, the Hillel. First, you were, as we know, my mom was so well educated with not only an undergraduate degree in education, but a master's as well, which she earned on weekends over 5 years and received that degree in 1971. And you did that while raising 3 somewhat wild and crazy boys. But I'll never forget how Dad helped type your master's thesis in our dining room, which was your final requirement for your degree. It was quite long too, as I recall. As all remember, Mom taught first grade at Hillel for about 15 years. And as we just heard, and it's so true, she literally taught thousands of young Jewish kids to read and write and do math. I know we've heard from many of your former students, and we heard from one today, but you were always so modest about the work you did as a teacher. Now, what many people don't realize is you used your salary, not your teacher salary, not just for your own goods and fun, but you used it to buy good clothes for Scott, Greg, and I. I still remember when you took me to the clothing store before I started high school so I could look good. I can never thank you enough for your effort you did for us. Next, of course, I want to talk about your music. You know, you retired from teaching and you pursued your early passion, which is playing classical piano music. While you did play Broadway show tunes for us, which I know we heartily enjoyed, your real passion and drive focused on learning and performing many, many classic piano pieces. It was amazing for me to watch your focus and your ability to practice for hours on such difficult music. It was not only playing the music, but you read and studied the composers. The books at your house of the various classical composers testify your deep knowledge of the pieces and their origins. It is truly an amazing feat. While it's impossible for us to list all the great composers you played, we should definitely put together, which I know Scott's worked on, a list of many of, or all of your recordings. Next, I know you and Dad enjoyed so many great trips after we were out of the house. I enjoyed looking at your pictures going to China and Japan, and then, you know, you were a constant fixture at the Denver Symphony as well as in Aspen. Robyn and I this summer were at the tent in Aspen, and we recall so vividly where you sat for so many summers. You know, we can also talk, and we should, about the exercise and walking that you did when you turned about 50. Your speed around Bible Park, which Sammy was talking about yesterday, and Jeremy. Your fast walks on the Rio Grande Trail in Aspen. And then, you know, it's fun that I can say this because I know we all like spin. You would do spin classes with many younger people at the Colorado Sports Club, and they couldn't believe how fast you were. But I'm so happy that Greg, over the last few months, made sure that your grand pianos, which Dad provided, have a future proper home. Your main piano is now in Aspen and will be played by the greatest pianists in the future. The other piano is at the Colorado State University Concert Center. I know that you'd be so happy that they're being so well treated. Now, on a more personal note, your many ways you focused and worked always helped me push myself to be my best. I saw your personal joy you obtained from doing so much. Life has many ups and downs, as we all know. And your early health issues with your arm and your back were tough battles, but you went through them and you got stronger because of your push to make your body stronger, to exercise, to build it up so that you could do all the things you wanted. Also, your constant concern and love for Dad and my brothers and I are things we always treasure. Since Robyn and I lived on the East Coast since 1986, we'd not spend a lot of time seeing you. But I will never forget the times we did spend together and the many phone calls where you always wanted to hear about how we were doing and Alexi, Max, and Asher were doing, and what pursuits we were following. Also, I can't thank Scott and Greg enough for bringing Mom here a few months ago. This was a real mitzvah that she could be here with Dad and Scott and Greg over the last several months, as opposed to being in Denver by herself. So thank you both very much. Now I want to end with describing one of the greatest qualities of Mom, which is a hallmark of Judaism. Mom, it was your kindness to all people. Over the years, you touched so many people with your music and interest, but people always described you as a very kind and caring person that never had anything negative to say. People loved being around you because of your kindness, which always shone through. Now that you're gone, I want to remember you as one of the kindest people I've ever met, as well as my mother. You set high standards, and you pushed me and my brothers to be our best. Thank you for being my mother. Love, and we will never forget you. Thank you. So, Scott.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Russell, thank you. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Dad. Some of this may sound a little familiar from what Jeremy said last night, or Sammy, or Russell, or maybe Greg might say, or the Rabbi said. Standing roughly 5'1" tall, weighing in at a petite 100 pounds, ironically, my 3 adult children referred to my mother as the tank. Notwithstanding her physical small size, my children's description of my mother was spot on. Of course, it takes a tank to be able to sit and practice piano 6 hours a day, which all of you know she did for decades. How did my mother learn to be such a tank? I give credit to my two loving, devoted grandparents, Dora and Frank Shidler. My grandparents were immigrants that came from Poland and Russia. Doris and Frank met in the United States and raised their family in a frontier community of Pueblo, Colorado. I'm sure my hard-working grandparents decided to settle in that tiny Pueblo town with the promise of economic opportunity that every immigrant family hopes to discover. My mother's sister, Joan, she's not here today, but was here a week ago, tells the story that when my mother was a child, my mother practiced piano 4 hours a day. Joan sat beneath the piano because it was my mother's job to take care of her sister and brother while her parents were at work. It certainly was a clever way for my mother to both practice piano and at the same time take care of her younger sister and brother. My grandparents worked 7 days a week in a store while leaving some of their parenting to my mother. It should be no surprise to that my parents passed their work ethic along to my brothers and me. If my kids ever wonder where their work ethic came from, all they need to do is look back over the generations. Another immigrant tank-like trait of my mother is that she never whined or complained, even though my mother certainly had cause in her life. In 1951, my mother enrolled in the School of Music at the University of Colorado. Her plan was to get a degree in music and become a classic pianist. An arm injury caused my mother to put aside that dream and focus her efforts on getting a more practical teaching degree. I can swear to everyone here, never once growing up did I ever hear my mother mention or complain that she had lost out on her dream. She never carried any animus or never looked back with regret. She just looked forward to another path she felt she could succeed at. Owing to my mother's deep first love for family, she gave 110% of all her energy and positivity to being an incredible wife, mother, and teacher, without compromise, putting aside her aspirations to play classical music. My mother knew she could not do both. However, once her kids left for college, she had done her part to create resilient children, and she had done what she could to pass along her Jewish tradition and ethical beliefs to her children. Finally, my mother, buried dream to play classical music was unearthed. My mother finally could go back to fulfilling her inner passion. Generously, my father made it a financial possibility for my mother to miraculously restart a musical career after more than 20-year hiatus. We all know my mother never stopped pursuing this passion until she was physically unable to continue. Also, my father never stopped doing everything he could to help my mother fulfill her passion. We all realize how challenging it would be for an adult to pick up piano in later years. It's hard to imagine the challenge for my mother to relearn to play classical music at a concert quality level at a later stage of life. Because my mother is a tank, my mother met the challenge without ever looking back with regrets that she lost 20 years being a teacher or raising a family. Instead, my mother was only filled with joyful gratitude that she was given this opportunity to play classical music once again. Her age, however, was not the only barrier that would make realizing her dream such a challenge. Consider, as an adult pianist, my mother's fingers became disfigured with a bone disease called osteoporosis. Typically, someone just diagnosed with osteoporosis in the hands and fingers in their 60s would relent. Not my mother, not your grandmother. Without complaining, the tank never let that get in her way. My mother reinvented finger and hand playing techniques so she could continue as a pianist. I see parallels between my mother's childhood and how the three of us were raised. The three boys received constant love from our parents, but we were expected to become self-reliant. As young children, there was never a moment that the three of us boys were not keenly aware of our parents' unshakable commitment and love. Nonetheless, our parents worked hard every day, early morning until 8 at night, to make sure we had food on the table. As such, it was never the case that our parents never really knew so many details of what went on with us each day. While she might help us get ready for school, she typically left the house before we did. Russ, Greg, and I managed to walk ourselves to and from school each day without having any help from our parents. Meanwhile, we learned to be self-reliant, just like my mother, as a child, helped raise her two younger siblings. In the evenings, after my mother returned home late from a teaching day, she made sure we had dinner and were focused on our homework. The moment food was on the table, my mother wasted no time and she became later focused on her class preparation for the next day. In other words, my mother did not fuss over every little detail taking care of Russ, Greg, or I. My father made it clear that our family depended on income from both my mother and father to support our family and buy shoes and other extras. My brother and I were the beneficiaries of a parenting style where no matter what financial hardship the family faced, family funds were first allocated to make sure that we had sufficient financial resources to help us learn and grow as people and realize our maximum potential. For my parents, the point of earning money was not to enjoy a lavish or luxurious lifestyle. Instead, the purpose of making money was to ensure their children and the next generation would have a better education and life than they did. Nothing would ever stand in the way of this shared goal between my parents. Even though money was hard to come by, my mother and father always managed to indulge my curiosities and allowed me to buy all types of chemistry sets or electric sets so I could experiment. Every once in a while, my mother even let me pick out products from an industrial catalog from Chicago called Granger, where I could buy products actually intended to be used in industrial laboratories. I also picked out magic tricks and magic books from other catalogs. Russ and I would study an Estes model rocket catalog, where we ordered and built model rockets that were launched at our schoolyard. All of this was an attempt to help us develop our own passion and our intellect. Also, my parents made the tough financial decision after my 7th grade year to put me in a costly private day school in order for me to avoid being set back by race rioting that was impacting my safety and education in the Denver public schools. Because my mother and father made this private school possible for me, I think it was critical for me to help me become the person I am today. Every day I realize there are hundreds of little things to remind me about my incredible mother, especially how she taught us to treat other people. I have done my best to pass these values to my children. The final takeaway to know about my mother is this. During my life, until the moment my mother passed away, my mother was deeply loved so much by the people she came in contact with. In her later stage in life, my brothers and I were always reminded by people that came in contact with my mother what a decent and kind person she was, and she wanted to make the world a better place for everybody she came in contact with, especially her family. That was at the very center of who she was as a person. She always taught us to never say anything bad about anyone, even if she had reason to. Both my parents guided us with this homespun common sense. They would say, if you can't say something nice about someone, keep your mouth shut. I cannot remember my mother ever saying anything mean or unkind about another person, even if they deserved it. While my mother suffered declining health over the past 5 or more years, every caregiver until the end loved my mother so much because her essence was sweet, kind, and gentle. My brothers and I have received countless notes and messages from her caregivers over the past several years how special, kind, and sweet she was. This was not a surprise for us. I hope everyone thinking about my mother today and every day will remember to lead with sweetness, kindness, and generosity, especially with the people we love and hold close, and leave the world in a better place. Mom, you accomplished all of these goals in life. You will not be forgotten.
So, to follow the rabbi, thank you, Rabbi. To follow Russ's words, Russ's thoughts, thank you, Russell and Scott, beautifully, genuinely expressed. Doesn't leave much for the youngest, third, Blanche's baby, to express. But I do have words and a few thoughts to share. First of all, Mom, you are an absolute, the epitome of a precious gift. A precious gift. You have been to your husband of over 66 years, to Russ, to Scott, to me, to the grandchildren. A true gift. A gift that will live on and carry on all of your attributes every day, forever, in our souls, in our spirits, for that which we are so grateful for, Mom, in terms of what you've done for us, cared for us, as expressed by Russ, by Scott. And as we think, as we are here today, gathering, Mom, for you, for us. And I say for you, for us, because if we move through, as you would say, life's journey, and life is a journey, but we move through together each and every day. And as I stand here looking to you, Mom, looking to you here under a magnificent tree that embraces you. Its roots embrace all of us. And that embracement is what gives us strength. So we feel sadness, heaviness in our hearts, but we feel joyous in the richness of the life you demonstrated to your parents, to your siblings, to Aunt Joan, my Aunt Joan, your sister Joan, your brother Zalle. And that is something to celebrate. And we will carry that celebration each and every day in our hearts. So I do want to just add a few points. So December 22nd, 1932, Pueblo, Colorado, where you were born, to the parents of Doris and Frank. You worked in their store in Pueblo, and while you were working in their store, you were also performing exceptionally at a very young age from an academic standpoint, which rooted you with discipline. Discipline for work ethic that you saw with your parents, that you then applied to every aspect of your being. You went on, as you heard from Russ and Scott, to gain entrance into the University of Colorado School of Music, where you obtained the highest degrees with honors in your undergraduate studies of music, specifically a focus on piano. During the end of that undergraduate program, thereabouts, my mother had the blessing of meeting her husband, her future husband, our father, your grandfather, Jerry. And they began a courtship that we've heard from Russ and Scott, which led to over 60 years of marriage that resulted in 3 sons, which we know, Dad, you, and we know Mom are so grateful for every day. And we know you feel blessed. And Mom, we know you carry those blessings, and your heart and soul swoons for you and Dad and what you created. While our mother demonstrated many exemplary parental skills, she taught us so much of which we've heard here today. So I'll move to just a couple thoughts around that. You taught us, along with Dad, with you, the importance of genuine truth, of what is real versus masked or superficial. Cut to the core of what's real and focus on that, and never giving up. The discipline of, yes, hard work, but thoughtful work. Qualities which are now evident, and I've had the joy as the baby, your baby mom, of observing Scott, observing Russ, every step of their path, their life journeys, and picking and choosing the many beautiful qualities that they carry. Dad, that you carry, and Mom, those that you carry and demonstrated to us, that carry through all the grandkids. During these formative years and growing up through adolescence, we've heard today about how you taught at Hillel Academy, you substituted at the Denver Public Schools, the rabbi spoke at the hundreds of kids, the thousands of kids. How lucky and blessed those students were, those students are today, because those students are adults now, teaching those same teachings to their kids. So we've heard about Aspen. We've heard about the Aspen Music School, about Mom's 15 years there, the oldest student amongst prodigies from Asia, from Eastern Europe, from around the world,
that here would be Blanche Greenberg each summer getting on the little school bus with children that are just true children, and they had admiration for her. She became one of them. And through that, she, as we've heard about the great composers, the piano scores, what a blessing. And yes, her piano will reside in the main pavilion for the Aspen Music Festival with a beautiful plaque on it that the pianist will see when he's at the keys that says, gifted by Blanche and Jerry Greenberg, and in quotes, music nurtures the soul. And Mom always spoke of the music and the impact on the richness of your soul. Mom continued to practice into her 80s. Then, as you've heard, she had to step away from the piano. But those keys will once again be picked up at the hands of some of the greatest pianists for years to come at the Aspen Music Festival. I carry within my heart, Mom and soul, the most beautiful, warm thoughts and memories of all that, Mom, you extended to your parents, to your siblings, to our father Jerry, to your sons, Russ, Scott, myself, to your daughter-in-laws and grandchildren. To live a life with no regret is what Mom taught me as an underlying theme. To live a meaningful and purposeful life, as my mother, Blanche Rose Shidler Greenberg, certainly has. With the deepest love and the fullest heart, I stand here today knowing how blessed I have been to have you, my mother, Blanche Rose Greenberg, makes my heart swoon. May our memory of you remain a blessing in all of our hearts and our minds forever.
Amazing. Love, family, stories, powerful life lessons. As we mourn Blanche today, indeed we do recall that journey, the quintessential American journey of her life. The child of immigrants who moved west for opportunity. Stuff of Wild West legends, right? Immigrant parents who were in retail, who gave their daughter the chance to go to college and follow her dreams. As we've heard, her goals changed and curved along the way, but yet they also stayed constant. Blanche met her love and partner after the war. Also the story of myth, right? Jerry, you and Blanche worked hard, raised 3, wonderful sons. I know you know how lucky you are, and with whom you have cherished adult relationships. And look at what you built. You can't see everyone behind you, nor can you see everyone here on live stream, but look at those grandchildren and their partners. One great grandchild, who knows, maybe more one. Right? I'm not judging anybody. Your grandchildren all here to honor their grandmother's life and love, and to honor you with their love. Russell, Scott, Greg, you spoke your memories. Beautiful, powerful. You've honored your mother in life and health, in sickness, and now in death. And you continue to be present in the most loving ways for your father. You are joined by your wives, your partners, Robyn, Alison, and Judy, and your children who traveled to be here today. Lexi, Max, Asher, Sammy, Jeremy, Gabi, Adam, Rachael, Zoe, you each have your own memories. You have your own lessons. I'm sure many of them echo what you heard your father say. And I know you'll speak of them later today at Shiva. Keep sharing, all of you, sharing these lessons, talking about them, remembering them, and living those lessons explicitly. Stop when you do something that Blanche said or did or impacted you and say, I'm doing this because Grandma told me or did it. And some of them are intense and serious, like a work ethic, and some of them might be silly and light. Maybe she taught you a moment of music or corrected your pitch or who knows what. Do this for yourselves, do this for Blake, and do this for the other great-grandchildren to come. Jerry, we know how grateful you are. What a partnership you and Blanche had. I know you give her all the credit for raising these boys, but come on, you did it together too. Think about those family events. Bar mitzvahs, birthdays, barbecues in the backyard, gatherings with cousins. As you recall your beloved Blanche, we see the example she set for your boys that they've spoken of today, teaching them independence and hard work, showing them the importance of Judaism in word and deed, and living education, an ultimate priority for her. She taught professionally, she taught your sons, and she went back to her own learning. Jerry, what a gift you received when those friends introduced you to Blanche when you came back from overseas. You are partners in every sense of the word. You worked so hard to provide for your children, to have them move ahead, as you moved ahead, both of you children of immigrants. You marked Shabbat each week and kept Judaism at the forefront for your sons. Together you lived in, as you all called it, your Denver shtetl, even as you went out into the world, and those sons did the same. As we recall Judaism and holidays, we step back for a moment and reflect on the importance of Shabbos for Blanche. It was so important to her. She was at shul every Shabbos. She dragged you boys along. I think drag might be the operative word, I'm not sure. But look what she gave you in that. On Erev Shabbat, she died, just as her mother had. So for those of you who light candles as a tradition, or those of you who might not, this Friday light candles. And step back for a moment and hear Blanche's voice. See her photo. Whether you do it every week or you do it periodically or you do it and you're thinking of her, start that. There's no guilt in that, there's honoring. Sometimes when we do that and we step back and we see the faces of those people for whom that was important, it is the most powerful thing. Jerry, your loss is great. Your loving partner for over 6.5 decades of dedicated marriage. Blanche was your guiding light and that of your family. Her light remains, even though she doesn't. Her love remains. As you were there, too, as a light for her. We've heard you made it possible for her to go back and follow her dreams of being a pianist. And in these last difficult days and weeks, you've been at her side every day, sitting with her, singing to her, holding her hand. As we gather this morning, powerfully aware of love and loss, we step back and recall the enduring lessons of Blanche's life. Among them, work. Powerful work ethic, love of family. Speak only positively about others. Do not engage in lashon hara, as Jewish tradition says, with bad speech about others. Do your best. Live without regrets. Have music in your life, for music nurtures the soul. Let us live the lessons of Blanche's life. Let us name them. Let us continue them in our words and deeds. May her memory be for a blessing. Zichrona levracha. We say together, Amen. If you're able to rise, I invite you to. If you're not, It's okay. Please stay seated. If you want to stay seated with your dad, that's okay. Rise back. Jerry, you can sit. Okay. You got it? Okay. Okay. Look, let's go. I have it in front of you. You're going to stand for a second for Kaddish in a moment, but then you have it. Okay? Hold up. El malay rachamim shochein bamromim hamsei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina im kedoshim u'telrim kezar harakia mazhirim et nishmat Bela Rachel bat 5 u'vedorit shehalcha le'olama bal harachamim yasireha b'seter kanafav le'olamim Bitzror hachayim et nishmata Adonai hu nachalata V'tanuach v'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Blanche who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance, may she rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. We turn now to the words of Kaddish that are in the pamphlet you received. We join together in an unbroken chain of tradition to speak these words together, surrounding our mourners with love, speaking them words with them. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, v'yamad divrach chirutei v'yamlich machlutei. V'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael B'agala v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam amei almaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudsha b'riyachu Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata Damiran v'yama v'imru Amen. Yehei shlom araba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom v'mrama hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Amikama tabo b'shalom. May Blanche come to her eternal home in peace. Go your way, for God has called you. Go your way, and may God be with you. May your righteousness go before you, and the glory of God receive you. I invite those who are here surrounding Blanche's immediate family, the mourners, to repeat these traditional words of consolation after me. May God console you with all who mourn in Zion and Jerusalem. Hamakom Yenachem Etchem B'toch She'ar V'lei Tzion V'Yerushalayim. Now go forth in peace to life. This time, it's possible to bury up first. Okay. It is part of our tradition to help bury our loved ones. This is for some a natural act of of kindness, and for some it is too difficult to participate in. So Judy will give us instructions. For those of you who wish to participate in the burial, you may do so. For those for whom it's too difficult, you may leave the gravesite at this time as our service is concluded, and there is no disrespect.
And that will help weave